Hi folks, welcome to the DPF Doctor TV, episode 4. So, this week what's been happening at the DPF Doctor? Some of you noticed that I've been on my travels, going all over the place, all around England this time. So we've been right around the south coast, speaking to some fantastic garages. So we're always looking to speak to the right people. Once we've talked to each garage that have shown interest in joining us, they go through a vetting process, make sure that we're getting people with not only the right skill set, but obviously professional, forward-thinking, enthusiastic garages. And what I mean by that is they're always wanting to be better at the job. They're always wanting to learn and improve their skill set, but they also have great customer service. We don't want to just fix DPFs and not educate the customer if it was driver error, and that's the sort of thing, So we want to fix the vehicle, but we also want to give something back to the customer, which is partly why we're doing the DPF Doctor TV as well, as to give some helpful tips out to the general public, and we've got nothing to gain from that. We're a professional network. So this week's been great. Done a lot of miles, going all over the UK, and but say I've spoke to some fantastic people, some people that are what we're looking for on the DPF Doctor network. So hopefully some of them will get over the final hurdle and become accredited members of the DPF Doctor network. They're all independent people, but it's not available just to buy. So that's something that we're proud of. You can't just join the network because you have the money to buy our setup, So you need to go through our vetting process so that we'll get the right people. So if you see our logo above the door, it's a proper person that's looking after your vehicle for you. So exciting stuff. We're moving forward. Got some great guys on the horizon to join the network, so watch this space. And if you're out there in your garage and you want to talk to us, I'm always keen to speak to the right people. But anyway, you notice I've got my gloves on, so that means it's a rare occasion that I'm getting my hands dirty. So what I'm going to talk about this week, we mentioned last week on the DPF Doctor TV that we were going to talk a little bit about in-tank DPF additives, the good, the bad and the ugly. So we've got a real example of the ugly here to show you, and that's not me, so this is the handsome side of it, but we're going to show you the ugly side shortly. So in-tank additives are great. Primarily most of them are a preventative maintenance. So for example, you do a lot of short journeys during the week, you do the school run, you go to the local shops, and you don't really get out too often in the vehicle. So in them circumstances, like a DPF regenerator is quite good to use on a fairly regular basis, but it's important that you use the correct dosage. So if you buy a bottle of regenerator and it says to use with a full tank of fuel, then that's important that you use it with a full tank of fuel, and that will assist regeneration. It'll usually reduce the length of time it takes for the vehicle to regenerate. So they can be very, very useful to prevent DPF problems. What you've got over and above that, that's a DPF regenerator. You would move up to something a little bit stronger, where we have an example here. Obviously people know by now we love JLM because it does exactly what it says in the tin, really high quality additives, and this is a particle filter cleaner. Now this is a step up from a regenerator, and this will help clean a sort of minor blockage to a sort of medium sort of blockage on your DPF. So if you catch it quick enough and the DPF is getting loaded up, then a DPF cleaner, great, try it, use the correct dosage. I can't stress how important that is. Reason for that is there are different types of additive on the market. Not a chemist, and I don't pretend to be, but obviously we know a bit about how additives work. We always use JLM because JLM works at a nice low temperature, so it reduces the temperature that will burn off the soot particles in the DPF. It's a similar concept to what Peugeot and Citroën brought out all them years ago, where they use an additive so the DPF will regenerate at a lower temperature. So it's very effective. However, there are other additives out there that will increase the temperature in the DPF. So the additive is there to promote temperature, and it's relying on that higher temperature to clean the DPF. You've got to be careful with this, and there's nothing wrong with using these additives, but it's important that you don't overdose them. If it's a full tank of fuel that it's advised to use it with, then use it with a full tank of fuel. What we're seeing a run of lately, unfortunately, at the DPF doctor is where people have been overdosing with additives, or they've been putting additives in the tank and performing a forced regeneration, and we're getting far too much temperature in the DPF. It's not a process that we would use personally. We would clean the DPF without the need of a regeneration. But if you put too much additive in the tank that is promoting temperature and you carry out a forced regeneration, then this is where unfortunately we see thermal damage in DPFs, and even to the point where we've seen casings melted. So just be careful with additives. My suggestion would be, obviously we use JLM because we trust the brand. It's not the only brand out there that works. Clearly it's not. So what you want to be doing is trying to use a reputable brand rather than what's cheap. The cheaper additives tend to promote a lot of temperature. So buy a good quality additive if you're going to be using them. Say nothing wrong with them. There's various good products out there. Just avoid the really, really cheap ones and overdosing it. So this is an example. What I'm going to show you now. I have a DPF here. This was taken from a 2013 Vauxhall Astra that came into us, and this is an example. Now we've got this cut ready to open, but we haven't opened it up yet. But what I'd like to show you in the end here, now we always ask our customers the full story of what DPF problems and where they're at up to now, and as you can see that this DPF is broken up there. It's broken up, it's all solid there as well. That's melted, so that's just been running at far too high temperature. The story with this car is it initially had a DPF problem, and the customer, it's not that the customer's done anything wrong, and this is partly why we're trying to educate people, is the lady unfortunately went and bought some DPF additive to help to clear the DPF problem. Now, this DPF problem, it turned out, was caused by an EGR valve stuck open, so the additive was essentially only treating the DPF, which was the symptom of the EGR problem. So had we unfortunately seen the vehicle early enough, we could have addressed the EGR problem, cleaned the DPF. So in an attempt to try and get the car going, the customer went and bought some additives, but actually put double the dosage into the vehicle. So the customer obviously told us that, which was great information. Now, I wish you could smell this through the camera, because the smell of this additive, whatever it is horrendous. It's absolutely rancid, the smell of this. And as you can see, this is how we were presented with the car. Now, had we seen this early enough, we could have repaired this. And possibly, if the customer had used 1 can of additive instead of 2, then there you go. Absolutely stinks. So, although we don't, this isn't put out here to scare people. This is just us trying to give people good advice, as all our customers that come into our workshop will sort of verify. We do give customers good advice on DPFs, and additives are good. We do sell additives as an aftercare product to many customers, but this is just an example of when it goes wrong. So if it says 1 bottle to 60 litres of fuel, don't be using 2 bottles, because this is the effects of it, So unfortunately, there's nothing we can do to repair this DPF. A new DPF for this car is actually almost £1,800 for a DPF for this car. The car's required a new DPF, and because that's just fit for the bin. So we, with the customer's permission, they know this video is going out, the customer's permission, they allowed us to sort of keep this, cut the DPF up and open it for you all to see. So that's just give you a little bit of insight with DPF additives, especially, if you've got someone that maybe doesn't know so much about DPFs and they say they're going to try some additives in the tank and carry out a regeneration, then you could end up in this position. So, and unfortunately we're seeing it far too often. So try them, take a car for a steady run. If they don't work, then seek professional advice, So it's why we carry out a thorough assessment on a DPF repair. The assessment is the key to the repair. Find out why the DPF was blocking up. In this case, it was a EGR valve sticking. address that, then clean the DPF at a nice low safe temperature and you don't end up with thermal damage. So hopefully you found that a little bit interesting. Don't ask which brand done this, we do know, but that's not what this video's about. It's not about belittling products or anything like that, because the product wasn't used in the correct dosage, so we can't be sure that on another vehicle that product wouldn't have been absolutely fine. So just be very, very careful what you use, and careful with your dosages. So watch the space for next week. What shall we talk about in episode 5? If you have any suggestions, drop us a message, make a comment, and we'll do our best to answer them for you. So we'll see you all back here next week for episode 5 of the DPF Doctor TV. Thanks for watching.